One Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, the first line on top of the Yomit. The Gemara goes back to the Mishnah. What did it say in the Mishnah here? We're talking about not doing work on Tisha B'Av. So the Mishnah said that there's Mokim Shenagu, some places they do work, some places they don't do work. But then it said that Reb Shimon Gamliel says that every person should see himself like a Talmud Chacham. The Tanna Kama had said that a Talmud Chacham shouldn't work, he has to mourn Tisha B'Av without any interferences. But Reb Shimon Gamliel says every person should consider himself to be like a Talmud Chacham. So the Gemara, Lemeimre, should we say that Reb Shimon Gamliel Savar loy chashinan liyuara? That over here, Reb Shimon Gamliel is saying we're not concerned of every person acting like a Talmud Chacham, and it'll be haughtiness that he's a Bal Gaiva. We're not afraid of this being an expression of Gaiva. But for Rabbanan Savri, Rabbanan hold chashinan liyuara. We are concerned that every person should act like a Talmud Chacham because it's haughtiness, and therefore he says follow the minhag amokim. But we see that their opinions are reversed regarding something else. The Tanan, we learned in the Gemara in Brachis and the Mishnah in Brachis, Chassan. When it comes to a Chassan, so the night of his Chasana, he's not supposed to say Kriya Shema, Ha'isik b'mitzvah patam and a mitzvah. He's busy with a different mitzvah, so he's too preoccupied. He can't have kavana to be Yitzhak a mitzvah. But then the Mishnah says, Chassan im yirtza likris Kriya Shema layla rishin kaira. If he wishes to say Kriya Shema, nevertheless, he's allowed. If he says, I could have kavana, he's allowed. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, no. Not everybody that wants to take this crown or this name and say for himself that I'm able to have kavana is allowed. So therefore, what do we see over here? We see the exact opposite. The Tanakame, the Chachamim are the ones that are saying that everybody can come and say for himself, yes, me, I'm able to have kavana. And Reb Shimon Gamliel is concerned, and he says, no, not everybody is able. And here we see the exact opposite. So, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mochlefes Hashita. The opinions have to be reversed. Whether here, we have to reverse the opinions, whether there. In one of the places, we have to reverse the opinions, so they should match up. You don't have to reverse the opinions. And we'll explain as follows. The Rabbanon loikashia, the contradiction that there is between the Rabbanon here and the Rabbanon there is not a question. The reason is as follows. Hacha, over here when it comes to working on Tisha B'Av, Kiven the Kula Alma of the Melacha, since everybody, if you're in a place where the minhag is to work and everybody is working, v'iyu loy of it, and you're an exception and you're not working, so mechsik yura. So then it looks like you're a Bal Gaiva, that you're different, you're holier than thou, and you're not working. Aval Hassam, when it comes to the Chassan, it's not that everyone's getting married that night, it's only him. Kiven the Kula Alma Kari, everybody is saying Kriya Shema, v'iyu nami Kari, and he's just going to say Kriya Shema along with everyone else. So that doesn't look like you don't stick out. Your gaiva doesn't stick out, so therefore you're able to say Kriya Shema with everyone else. The contradiction in Reb Shimon Gamliel's opinion is also not a question. When it comes to Kriya Shema on the night of a chasana, so you have to have kavana. And we know that a chassan that's preoccupied with the mitzvah, getting married, he's not able to have kavana. That's the nature of a human being. So therefore, mechsik yura, the fact that he is saying Kriya Shema, this shows haughtiness that I'm different, I'm superhuman, I'm able to say Kriya Shema, I'm able to have kavana. Aval hacha, but over here, the fact that you're not working while everyone else is working on Tisha B'Av, it doesn't look like gaiva. Why not? Amri, we had this svar in the Gemara before. People will say, Malacha de Lesle, the guy is unemployed, doesn't have work. Go out and see. There's many people in the marketplace that are not working, unemployed. Or he's weak, or whatever it is. Okay? So therefore it doesn't show in any way that he's doing anything different than anyone else. He just is out of work, or he's too weak to work, whatever it is, like you say, yeah. Just to conclude this inyan, this halacha of a chassan, does it apply today? And Shulchan Aruch it actually says that because today, in Rishayim there's a machlokes, whether we paskin that a chassan should say Kriya Shema, not say Kriya Shema. But then it says in Shulchan Aruch today, since anyways most people don't have necessarily the proper kavanah of Kriya Shema, so therefore a chassan could be mechaven just like anyone else. The anan sahadi that a chassan can't be mechaven is if in times when the taka had real proper concentration on the words of Kriya Shema, so then anan sahadi a chassan can't have that kavanah. But today, it's not really relevant today. It's the same thing as brought Benegeh to Shmei Nesra, that you're supposed to have kavanah in the first brach of Shmei Nesra. What's if you didn't have kavanah? So technically you're supposed to daven over. But today, since we know that people don't have kavanah, and if we'll obligate you to daven a second time, not necessarily will you have kavanah the second time. So therefore there's no obligation to daven over again.
He's in his house. It's not like in front of everybody they see. Like
not necessarily. There's a chasana, there's a celebration. Okay? So people see, he's davening with a minyan, he's there with everyone, l'chayda. Zog the Mishnah. We're going back now to Erev Pesach. It all began with the minig, whether you do work Erev Pesach or not. So in the first Mishnah of this Pedic, it says it depends on the minig amokim. So the Gemara here continues the subject. The Chachamim say, Bi Yehuda, in the place of Yehuda, which one section in Eretz Yisrael, Hayu Oisim Malacha, Ba'arvi Pesachim, At Chatzais. They would do work on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. U'begalil lo Hayu Oisim Koliker. In Galil, they wouldn't do any work on Erev Pesach even before Chatzais. Halayla, what's with the night of Erev Pesach? In other words, if there's an Isser to do work, when does that Isser of Erev Pesach begin? Does it start from the morning or from the night? So Beishamai Oisrim, Beishamai says the time of not doing Malacha starts already from the night before. And Beisilo Matirna the Netzachama. You can do work until Netzachama. It's all the Isser only begins from Netzachama. Okay, so we see over here a machlokes between Beishamai and Beisilil, and Beishamai is using the term Isser. And there's a machlokes here when this Isser begins. So the Gemara immediately asks a question on this. Meikaret on in the first mission of this Pedic, it said Minhage. This whole thing is just a custom, meaning even in places where they don't work, it's not really an Isser. It's the minig not to work. But over here now in this Mishnah, Tana Yisura, over here we're saying that there's an Isser, and there's a machlokes Beishamai and Beisilil when that Isser applies, by night or by day. So how could you say it's an Isser if it's only a minig? It's not a question because this is Taka Machlokes. Ha Rab Meir, the first Mishnah was Rab Meir, which holds that it's all dependent on a minig, and Ha Rab Yehuda. Our Mishnah here is Rab Yehuda that says that there's actually an Isser in those places where they don't work. The Tanya, we see in the Braisa it says as follows. Rab Yehuda said the same like it said in our Mishnah. Bi Yehuda hayu oisen malacha ba'arvi pesachim at chatzais. In Yehuda they would work until chatzais. Ubegal leim noisen koliker. And in Gal they would not work. Amalei Rab Meir, so Rab Meir answers Rab Yehuda and says, Ma raya Yehuda v'Gal lekan. Why are you bringing what Yehuda does or what Galil does? Ella rather, Mokim shenagu lasis malacha oisin, Mokim shenagu shaloi lasis ein oisin. In every place, forget about Yehuda and Galil. In every place it just follows the minig. The minig is to do, you do. If not, you don't. So what exactly is Rab Meir telling Rab Yehuda? So the Gemara explains, Rab Meir minhage. Rab Meir is answering Rab Yehuda and saying that it's dependent on the minig in every single place. Meklal, what is he trying to answer him? He's answering him because we see from this that Rab Yehuda is Surah Ka'amar. Rab Yehuda was saying that Yehuda and Galil, the opinion of the people in Yehuda was that there's an Isser, and the opinion of the people in Galil was that it's mutter. On that, Rab Meir answered, it's not a difference of opinion whether it's mutter or aser. It's just totally in the minig in every individual place. So we see clearly from this Braisa that this is a machlokes. Whether they work on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, in the place where they did not do work, is that an iser or is it just a minig? Fragt the Gemara, V'sava Rab Yehuda. Does Rab Yehuda hold that arba asar mutter ba'asiyas malacha? That in certain places their opinion was that, like he said in Galil, their opinion was that. Was it in Galil or in Yehuda? In Yehuda, their opinion is that they can do malacha on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. But for Tanya, learned in the Braise, Rabbi Yehuda said, Hamenachish b'shloisha asar. A person was weeding his field. He's pulling out the whatever weeds in his field. V'nekra b'yadoi. And now, by mistake, he pulls out a grain, not just weeds, but he pulls out grain that's growing there. And he wants to replant it. It should continue growing. Now here's the issue. It's on Yud Gimel Nissen, and it's very close to Tezayin Nissen. What happens on Tezayin Nissen? Tezayin Nissen is the day that they bring the carbon oimer, and from then, the carbon oimer is mater, all the wheat, grain that grew until then, that it shouldn't be considered to be chodesh anymore, that you should allow to eat it. That oimer, that's mater on Tezayin Nissen. What does it matter? Anything that's already growing. Anything that took root. Let's say you planted something very close before the Omer. Is the carbon Omer going to be matter it? It depends. If it was planted early enough that it took root in the ground already, so then the carbon Omer is matter that. Whatever's going to grow from that is considered to be already from the previous year, and the carbon omer was mated. If you planted it close enough to when the carbon omer is brought, and it didn't take root in the ground yet, so that it's already shaykh to after the carbon omer. So you're going to have to wait for the heter of the following year of the carbon omer to be mated. Okay, so therefore over here what it says is as follows. Now let's see the Gemara inside. So he by mistake uprooted a grain, not only the weeds, and he wants to replant it. Shaisla b'makim atit. You should replant it in a muddy place, in a wet, more moist, wet place. What's the reason? So it should take root quickly, so that the heter of 4 days later, the carbon omer should be mated. Ve'ein shaisla b'makim agrid. Do not replant it in a dry area, because then it's not going to take root quickly enough, and it's not. So then the carbon omer, when it's 4 days later, is not going to be mated. So now the Gemara is medayik. What is Rabbi Yehuda saying here in this baraisa? B'shloisha asar in. This is only on the 13th day of Nisan, but b'arba'asa loy. But on the 14th day of Nisan, then he can't replant it. Even in a wet place, he can't replant it, and it's not going to be early enough that it should take root in order to become permitted with the carbon omer. Says the Gemara, why not? Mechti, let's see. Shamina leila Rabbi Yehuda da Omar. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion regarding how long does it take for something to take root in the ground. There's a machlekes about this. There's another opinion that holds that it actually takes 2 weeks. But Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is it doesn't take 2 weeks. It takes 3 days. So we know what Rabbi Yehuda says, the Omar, kol arkove, she'ene keletas l'shloishes yamim, when you're grafting. So if it doesn't take root, or if it doesn't become absorbed in 3 days, shuvene keletas. So it's not going to get absorbed anymore. So what do we see over here? Rabbi Yehuda holds for something to get absorbed when you're grafting, and the same thing also for something to take root when you're planting. Well, how long does it take? 3 days. So if so, why are we talking over here about Yud Gimel Nisan? If on Yud Daled Nisan you're allowed to do work as well in your field, so Lamalil Shloisha. So why is he talking about Yud Gimel Nisan? You could even talk about Yud Daled Nisan. That's 3 days. Doesn't that give you 3 days to replant it? Arbeiser, you have Yud Daled, Chameser, Tezvav, or Mikzas Shitzer, and part of the 16th, part of Tezayin Nisan. So if Rabbi Yehuda wants to hear explained that you have to replant it, that it should take root in order that it should become mutter with the carbon omer, so Yud Daled would be just fine. You don't have to go back to Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, Tezvav, Tezayin. Elamai, what is the Gemara trying to prove from this? The only reason Rabbi Yehuda spoke about Yud Gimel is because you're not allowed to do any malacha on Yud Daled. That's what. So technically, you can't do any work then. So the question is, so we see here Rabbi Yehuda holds you're never allowed to do work. So how does Rabbi Yehuda say that in Yehuda, in the place Yehuda, they did do work? This braise of Rabbi Yehuda was said in Gal. In Gal, Rabbi Yehuda said they didn't do any work. That's one answer. But there's the nights. How about the nights? Why does he say that this happens on the day of Yud Gimel Nisan? Why doesn't it say that he was weeding his field at night? This braisa over here of Rabbi Yehuda is going according to Beis Shammai's opinion that in Galil, where they do not do malacha, they don't do malacha already starting from the night before. Rav Ashi Amar lo'elim ke Beis Hillel, it could follow the opinion of Beis Hillel. By night you're allowed to do malacha, but lefi she'ein darken shel bnei adam l'nachish balayla. Who's weeding his field in the middle of the night? It's dark. It's not the derech of a person to do that. So the braisa is telling you the normal time, Yud Gimel by day, but not Yud Daled by day, because in Galil they did not do malacha Yud Daled by day. Ravina says a different answer. La'olam bi Yehuda. Really, this is talking about Yehuda, where they did do malacha on Yud Daled. So then why didn't Rabbi Yehuda say that the story over here of the person that pulled out and wants to replant the wheat, why didn't he talk about it in Yud Daled? But when it comes to this wheat taking root again, enough in time for the carbon omer, chad miktzas hayom kekulo yamrinan, what's going to happen over here? You have part of Yud Daled. It's not the full day of Yud Daled. We're not talking about a person that pulled it out mamish by the beginning of Bein HaShmoshes of Yud Daled. We're talking about in the morning, sometime in the morning of Yud Daled. So it's not the full day of Yud Daled. So you have part of the day of Yud Daled, part of full Tezvav that is, and then part of the day of Tezayin. You're going to have to say Miktas Hayom Kekule twice for Yud Daled and for Tezayin. That you don't say. You would say Miktas Hayom Kekule once, for there to be enough time for this to take root, but not twice. This is a cloud that's brought up in other places as well. When you get to Miktas Hayom Kekuloi, whether you say Miktas Hayom Kekuloi twice, I don't remember now the hechetimtza of this, but it's a shaila, whether you could say Miktas Hayom Kekuloi twice or not. Over here, the Gemara emphasizes Behashrasha. So you could be medayik from the Gemara. Maybe it's over here only regarding taking root, which is a physical thing. It's a metzias that it doesn't take root less than 3 days, Rabbi Yehuda says. And even if you say that it's not 3 full days, but you can't narrow it down to cut off the first day and the last day, that it should be such a short period of time. It has to have at least 2 full days and then part of another day for it to be able to take root to become mutter with the carbon. So that's why he said Yud Gimel Nissen and not Yud Daled Nissen. Gemara continues, the Mishnah continues weiter on this subject of doing melacha on Erev Pesach. Zok the Mishnah. Any work that you began doing this work before Arba Asar. So we're talking over here about those places where it's asa to do work on Arba Asar. So you began doing your work before Arba Asar. You could complete your work on Arba Asar. But do not start your work on Yudal Nissen. Even if it's such a small job that you can begin and complete it right away, doesn't matter. In those places where it's Asar, you don't begin your work on Arba Asar. The Chachamim say, Gimel Umaniyais, there are 3 works that Oisen Malacha Ba'arbe Pesachim. There are 3 craftsmen that they are allowed to do their work on Erev Pesachim. At Chatzais, even before Chatzais. Ve'elohein, until Chatzais that is. After Chatzais you're not allowed. Ve'elohein hachayotin, tailors, hasaparim, barbers, va'akoifsin, and launderers. Yeseh by Yehudaime, af ratzonin. Also shoemakers are allowed to fix shoes, make shoes on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. So the Gemara begins with the first part of the Mishnah where it said if you began your work before Arba Asar, you could continue and complete your work on Arba Asar itself. The Gemara brings over here an Ibaya and has 3 different ways how you could interpret this Mishnah. Ibaya lahu, the question was asked, what kind of work are we talking about over here? This Mishnah is talking about doing work on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, something that's needed for Yom Tov, and then it's telling you that if you began before, you could complete it on Yudal in the morning. But if it's a work that you're doing which is not needed for Yom Tov, so then you're not even allowed to complete it, even if you started it before. So the Mishnah was only talking about something that's needed for Yom Tov. It's the first leifin. Or perhaps the Mishnah was talking about work that's not needed for Yom Tov. Then we're saying that you could complete it. But if it's something that you need for Yom Tov, you're allowed to even begin doing that work on Yom Tov, on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, because you need it for Yom Tov. So we're being more lenient here. The second oifen is more lenient, saying that there's Adarabah, something that you need for Yom Tov, you're allowed to do before Chatzais. Or maybe a third way how to learn this Mishnah. There's no distinction whether you need it for Yom Tov or not. Bein l'tzayrech hamayid, bein shaloi l'tzayrech, whether you need it for Yom Tov, whether you don't. Migmar in, you're allowed to complete your work if you started it before you dalit, but aschuli loy, you're not allowed to start a job or work on Erev Pesach even before Chatzais. Those are the 3 Ifanim to learn this Mishnah. Toshema, so it brings you a Braise, aval lo yaschil, the Braise says, lo yaschil bitchila barba osar, don't start doing work on Arba Asar in the morning. Afilet siltzul katan, even if it's just a small belt. You're making a small belt, and afilet svacha katana, or a small hairnet for a hair covering. You can not, even a small job like that, you're not allowed to start. So now, my afilu. What was the chiddush over here when this Braisa says afilu? Even something like this, you're not allowed. Lav, don't you think what it's saying is afil lahani? Even these things. He's doing it, he's preparing it because he needs it for Yom Tov. Migmar in, you're only allowed to complete it if you started it from before, but aschuli loy, to start doing this work on Erev Pesach in the morning, you're not allowed. So meklal, so from this I could learn and say, the shaloi l'tzayrech, if it's something that you don't need for Yom Tov at all, migmanami legamrina, you're not even allowed to complete it even if you started it from before. So I see over here, like the first item, which was the most stringent, that something that's not needed for Yom Tov, you're not even allowed to complete. That was the afilu, that's the chiddush of this Braisa. Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. I can tell you that really, even something that's not needed for the Yom Tov, if you started it before, you're allowed to complete it on Erev Pesach in the morning. What was the chiddush of afilu that this Braisa said? Even these things, like a small belt or a small hairnet, that are very small jobs. I would think to say, you begin and conclude the work immediately. It's a very small thing. So I could start it even on Erev Pesach in the morning. It's not a big job. So Kamash Malon, that was the Chiddush of Afilu, that even a small job like this, you're not allowed to start on Erev Pesach. Tashaman, there's another Braisa that says, Rab Meir, Omer, Kol Malacha Shil Tzayich HaMayit. Any work that you're doing for the purpose of Yom Tov, so he clearly spells out, if it's for the purpose of Yom Tov, so then, Goimra Bar Ba'asar, you could complete that work in the morning on Yudalid. But Eimasai, when is this? Bizman Shehischel Ba'Kaidim. Arba Asar. If you started the work before Arba Asar. Aval, Lo Hischel Ba'Kaidim Arba Asar. If you didn't start it before Arba Asar, then Lo Yaschel Ba. You shouldn't start the work on Arba Asar in the morning. Lo Yaschel Ba Arba Asar. And I feel it Tziltzil cotton, even a small belt, like we said before, and I feel it Svacha Katan, even a small hairnet. So what do we see over here? Rabbi Yehuda is clearly telling me that the Tzayich HaMayid in, Shaloi the Tzayich HaMayid Lai. That only L'Tzayich HaMayid in, Shaloi L'Tzayich HaMayid Lai. So l'chayri, you see over here that only L'Tzayich HaMayid are you allowed to conclude the work before and not conclude the work on the Yudalid and not again. Only if it's L'Tzayich HaMayid are you allowed to conclude the work on Erev Pesach in the morning. But if it's something which is Shaloi L'Tzayich HaMayid, you're not even allowed to conclude it. So the Gemara says no, Loi. That the truth is, that really, even if it's Shalei L'Tzayrech, you're also allowed to complete it on Erev Pesach. Rab Meir clearly said that he's speaking about something which is only L'Tzayrech HaMayid, but for Hakam Hashbalon, what he's telling me is that that even though this is something which is L'Tzayrech HaMayid, you would have thought that you could start it on Yudalit in the morning. So he's telling you, even this, you have to start it dafka before and not on it. But Rab Meir never clearly said that if it's not L'Tzayrech HaMayid, you're not allowed to finish it off in the morning. You are allowed to. But now the Gemara brings a Braise where it says it clearly. Toshama, it says in the Braise, Rab Meir Omer. Rab Meir says, Kol melacha shehi L'Tzayrech HaMayid, Goimra bar ba'asa. If it's for the purpose of Yom Tiv, you start the job before and you can finish it bar ba'asa. V'she'eino L'Tzayrech HaMayid, but if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tiv, asar. Then it's forbidden. So the Braise clearly says that if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tiv, you're not allowed to complete the job in the morning. V'oisen melacha bar v'psachim at chatzais. You can do work on Erev Pesach until chatzais, but b'makim shenagu, in the place that's the minig, but makim shenagu in, that's only the place where there is that minig. Loi nagu loi. If the minig is not to do work, you're not allowed. And v'shma mina, what did it say in the beginning of this Braise? L'tzayrech hamayid in, shaloi l'tzayrech hamayid loi. You could complete the job if it's for the purpose of Yom Tiv, but if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tiv, you can't complete the job. Shma mina, so this is a clear ayah, like the first oifen that the Gemara brought before, which is the most stringent, that you're only allowed to complete the work on Erev Pesach in the morning if it's for the Tzayich HaMayid. If not, you can't complete it.
Is that how it
I don't think we go even according to this minig b'chlal, of not doing work out of Pesach in the morning. We don't follow that minig b'chlal. Sagt the Gemara weiter. It said in the Mishnah, "V'chachamim vayimrim shalosh umaniyos." There are three different types of craftsmen. What was it? You had before in the Mishnah, the tailors, the barbers, and the launderers that are allowed to do their work, even in places where it's also to do work in the Erev Pesach in the morning. Tana, we learned in the Braise, hachayotin, the tailors. Why are they allowed to do work on Erev Pesach in the morning? Shekin hedyet teifer kedarkai b'chol shamayid. We see that even on Chol Hamoed, any regular person is allowed to sew his clothing on Chol Hamoed. So Chol Hamoed, not doing work on Chol Hamoed, is more stringent than Erev Pesach before Chatzais. So if you're allowed to sew your clothing on Chol Hamoed, for sure on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, the tailors are allowed to complete their jobs. Hasaparin, v'hakoifsim, barbers, launderers. So why are they allowed to do their work on Erev Pesach before Chatzais? So again, we prove it from Chol Hamoed. Sheken abam medina sayam, someone that's coming from overseas, v'hayotze mi beisa asurin, or someone that came out of prison and he didn't have a chance to take a haircut or do his laundry before Yontif, misaprin or mechapsim b'chayla shamayid. He's allowed to take a haircut and wash his clothing on Chol Hamoed. If you have a chance to do it before, so then you're not allowed a Chol Hamoed. But if you didn't, if you came from away or whatever, you couldn't do it before, so you're allowed to do it in Chol Hamoed. So we see taking a haircut and it's a big shaila. An upsharnish, it's a big shaila. Some do it, some don't do it. It's not so pashut. Yeah, I think that you're allowed to. You're allowed to. I mean, yeah, because the minig is dafke not to do the upsharnish before, so you couldn't do it before. So there's no reason why you're not allowed to do it in Chol Hamoed. Correct. So from that we learn out, beneged to barbers and the launderers on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, that you're allowed. Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda added to this, Af haratz onin, that the shoemakers are also allowed to make shoes on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. Shekain, oile regolim, misaknim, and aleim, b'choyle shamayid. The people that were oile regel, and they had to fix their shoes, they traveled a long distance, and they had to fix their shoes in Cholamayid, they're allowed to fix their shoes in Cholamayid, so from that we learn out that you're allowed to make shoes on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. So the chiddush of Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll see here in the Gemara, is that a shoemaker is not only allowed to fix shoes on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, but he's actually even allowed to make shoes from scratch on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, to do the whole malacha. So b'mai kamiflagi, what's the argument here regarding the shoemaker? Mar Sava, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is L'meiden t'chilas malacha misayif malacha. Just like you see in Cholamayid that you're allowed to fix shoes, so too I learn out to Erev Pesach before Chatzais that you're allowed to make shoes from scratch on Erev Pesach. Mar Sava L'meiden. No, I can't compare. T'chilas malacha misayif malacha. On Cholamayid you're allowed to fix shoes, but you can't learn out from there when you get to Erev Pesach that you're allowed to make the shoes from scratch. So therefore, they didn't say that Atzonim is included in this. Zok the Mishnah, more details regarding what kind of malacha should you be doing on Erev Pesach before Chatzais in those places where it's asa to do malacha. So again, the main point is that a person shouldn't be doing malacha on Erev Pesach before Chatzais because there's so many things that you have to do. You have to get rid of your chametz, you have to prepare the matzah and the korban Pesach, so not to get a person distracted, so you shouldn't have his things done in time. So, Meshivin Shevachin L'Tarnagolim B'Yudalit. You're allowed to place the hens on the eggs to warm the eggs on Yudalit. This is not considered to be too much of a tircha that will take your mind off what you have to do. You're allowed to do this work on Erev Pesach. A hen that ran away from its eggs, you're allowed to bring it back to its place to sit there on the eggs. It's not too much of a tircha for a person to do. If this hen that was there sitting on the eggs that died, you can go and bring another hen to sit on the eggs. You're allowed to clean away the waste matter that there is under the feet of the animals. Biyudalid on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. Ubemayid, when it comes to Chalamayid, misalkin litzdadin, you're not allowed to shovel it out and take it out of the place altogether, but you can just push it to the side. Just litzdadin, that's it. Melichin kalim, you're allowed to bring your kalim, your vessels, or you can bring him back home from the house of a craftsman that was to fix your dishes or to bring it back from him or to bring it to him. And that's even if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tov. You're allowed to bring it to him, deliver it to him to do the work, or to bring it back home from him. Zok the Gemara. So the Gemara begins with the beginning of the Mishnah. Hashta Aisuvi Mesvina. The first halach of the Mishnah was that you're allowed to place the hen on the eggs. So you're allowed to begin this. You're allowed to do this work to begin the process of the hen warming the eggs. So, haduri mipaya, does it need to tell me that once it's already in the middle of warming the eggs that you're allowed to bring back the hen? As we'll see soon, once it started the process, if you're not going to bring it back, it's a davar ha'ovid. The eggs begin to turn. It's not going to be an egg that you can eat anymore. And if the hen runs away, if you're not going to bring it back, so the egg is not going to be fit for eating. So if you can begin the process, for sure you should be allowed to bring back the egg, the hen, to complete the process. What's the chiddush here? So Amar Abaye says, you're right, we're going to have to divide the Mishnah. Seifa asan l'chayle shel mayid. The second halacha is only about cholamayid. The first part of the Mishnah is saying regarding Erev Pesach, that you can place the hen on the eggs to start warming the eggs, and for sure you're allowed to bring back the hen when it was already in the middle of the process. The second part of the Mishnah is only talking about cholamayid. So this is one of the sources for the famous halacha regarding cholamayid, that only a davar ha'ovid are you allowed to do work in cholamayid. So over here, to place the hen on the eggs, the chatchila on cholamayid, you're not allowed. It's not a davar ha'ovid. Wait to warm the eggs until afterwards. But once you started the process and the hen runs away, if you're not going to bring it back to finish the process, then these eggs are going to get ruined. It's not going to be eaten. It can't be eaten anymore, and it's also not fully developed. So therefore, in cholamayid, there's a davar ha'ovid. You're allowed to bring it back. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, so when are you allowed to bring back this hen? Only if it's within 3 days that this hen ran away, that it rebelled and ran away. Because the warmth of this hen has not yet left it. It has the warmth that it's able to heat up the eggs and come back. And also it has to be it's only if the hen already sat on the eggs for 3 days. Why? The pastala bei legamri, because then it warmed up the eggs enough that it totally ruined the eggs, that it will not be able to be eaten at all. But if this hen ran away more than 3 days, so now it doesn't have that same warmth anymore to be able to sit on the eggs. Or it was before 3 days that it already sat on the eggs. It didn't completely ruin the eggs yet. It could be eaten b'shas hatchak. Some people will still eat these eggs. So then you don't return the eggs on Cholamayid. This is not considered to be a davar of it. Some people will still eat these eggs. Rabami disagrees. Rabami says, even if the hen ran away within 3 days of it sitting on the eggs, madrinon, you still bring back the chicken, the hen, to sit on these eggs. Why? What's the machlokes? What are they arguing about? So, Mar Savar, the first opinion over here is, Rav Huna's opinion is, Lehefsid merube chashashu. Lehefsid muet loy chashashu. If the hen sat on the eggs for 3 days, so the eggs are totally destroyed. You can't sell it, you can't eat it, you can't do anything with it. Well, hefsid muet, what does hefsid muet mean? If it's sat less than 3 days, so some people will still eat it. It could be sold for a cheaper price. It's not the total hefsid. So for that they weren't chayshish. They did not allow you to bring the hen back. But Mar Savar, Rabami's opinion is lehefsid muet nami chashashu. They were chayshish for hefsid muet as well, even less than 3 days. So it's going to be necessary to bring it back, because otherwise you're going to have a hefsid muet. Bring my pistol Wasser, please. Dank. Even for hefsid muet, they were chayshish as well. Okay, that's the machlekes over here.
Takes a long time.
Yeah, it's fine. Takes.
How long does it takes to hatch an egg in the farm here?
Now, how long does it take? Yeah, when today it's all done with technology. It's not done anymore with a hen. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. Sorry about this. It's not okay. My voice. Okay, Dr. Gemara weiter. Garfin mitachas. So we're talking over here about removing the waste matter that's under the feet of the animals. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Braisa, Hazevel shebachotzer, the waste that's there in the chotzer, mesalken oisel etzdodin, you remove it to the side. Then it says, sheberefes shebachotzer, in the barn or even in the courtyard, might see an oisel ashba. You can totally take it out to the place where it belongs in the garbage. Fragt the Gemara, haguf akashya. This price is contradicting itself. First you say you can only remove it to the side, but you can't take it out to the garbage. Then you say you can take it out to the garbage. So Abaye answers, this is not a question. The first part of the Braisa is talking about, or actually the second part of the Braisa is talking about an Erev Pesach, so there you're allowed to take it out to the garbage. Then the first part of the Braisa is talking about a Cholamayit. Cholamayit is more stringent than Erev Pesach. So over there you're not allowed to remove it. That's the difference. Rav says no. They're both talking about Cholamayit. What the Braisa is saying is, usually you're not allowed to take out the waste matter. You have to just push it to the side. But if it's so much that the whole place becomes full, like a barn that's full of this waste matter, so then you're allowed to take it out to the garbage. This is something which is brought up in Pesachim as well, but today it doesn't really apply. Today, when it comes to garbage, you're allowed to take it out into the garbage, even a Cholamayit, because it's not the same kind of a tircha. Over here we're talking about the tircha of shoveling it up and taking it out. This is a kind of tircha that you're not allowed to do on Cholamayit. But just taking out a garbage bag on Cholamayit is allowed. Bringing your kalim to a craftsman to fix it, or to deliver it back home, so it said it's allowed, even if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tov. Rav Papa said, Rava was testing us, and he said to us as follows, I'll ask you a question. Tanan, in our Mishnah we learned, it says, you can deliver or you can bring back home the kalim from a craftsman, even if it's not for the purpose of Yom Tov. I'll ask you a contradiction. In another place it says, you cannot bring home the kalim from a beis uman, so because you're not allowed to bring it back. So it says the exact opposite. And then it says, if you're afraid to keep it there by the uman, you're afraid that it's not safe, it's leaving it there, it's going to get stolen. So you can bring it to a different courtyard where it'll be safe, but you're not allowed to bring it home. So you see that this is a tircha that's not allowed. Umeshaninan, and we answered Rave loy kashi. It's not a question. Kam bar ba'asar. Our Mishnah is talking about Erev Pesach before Chatzais. So here we're more lenient. You're allowed to deliver and bring home the kelim. And Kam b'chayla shalmayid, the other brayse you quoted for us, is talking about cholamayid. Over there it says that you're not allowed to deliver and bring home the kelim. Viba you say, man. Or the Gemara says another answer we can say on this. Hava ha b'chayla shalmayid. In both cases it's talking about cholamayid and v'loy kashya. It's not a question. Kam b'maminoi. In the Braisa where it says that you're not allowed to bring it home is because you trust him. You trust this craftsman. You're going to leave your kelim there and you're going to pay him. Which means even if you're going to pay him now, but you're not going to bring home your kelim, you trust him that when you're going to come to pick it up, he's not going to charge you a second time. That's one pshat Rashi says. Another pshat maminoi Rashi says, you trust him that after you paid him, he's not going to take your kelim and sell it to someone else. So you trust him, so therefore you have to leave it there. But kan b'she'enim aminoi. In our Mishnah, we're talking about a craftsman. You don't trust him. I paid him. I'm afraid that he's going to sell it, or he's going to charge me a second time. So over here, you're allowed to bring it home. Vatanya, and the Gemara brings a raya for this. This Vatanya is a proof, because it says in the Braisa, Mevi'en kelim mibeisa uman. You're allowed to deliver home your kelim. You bring home your kelim from the craftsman. Kagayin hakad mibeisa kador. A jug from the potter. V'hakois mibeisa zagog. A cup from the glassmith or the glassmaker, whatever. So these are things that you need for Yontif. Avaloit samer mi beis hatzaba. You're not allowed to bring home the wool from the person that dyes them. V'le kelim mi beis uman, or other kinds of kelim from the beis uman that you don't need them now for Yontif. V'im ein loy ma yoichal. If this craftsman doesn't have what to eat and he's relying on you paying him for the job that he did, so nice and leis pay him, umanicha yetzloi, and leave your kelim by him. But if you don't trust him, you paid him now, and you don't trust him to leave the kelim there, so manicham bebayis asamachle. Take it from him, but don't deliver it home. Don't bring it home. Put it in the house nearby. If you're afraid that it's going to get stolen, so then you can bring it in a way that people won't notice. You could bring it privately to your house in a way that people won't notice. So in this Braisa we see that it brings up this concept that there's a difference if you trust a guy or if you don't trust a guy. So now the Gemara says, Teratzta meviin. This is an answer, whether you trust him or not. This is only an answer regarding bringing it back home. The kelim are in the craftsman's possession. The question is whether you trust him or not. But melichin kashir, but melichin still remains a question. Diktani ein meviin. In the Braisa that we quoted, it says that you're not allowed to, even kelim that are there already by him, you're not allowed to deliver it back home. So for kolshkin ein melichin, from this I understand that for sure you're not allowed to go and bring it to him. So what's going to be answer there? It's not a matter of trust. It's in your house. So what's going to be the answer to the stira that in our Mishnah it said melichin and here it says ein melichin? The best answer is, like we said before, that the difference is if it's cholamayid or erev Pesach. That's the answer.